Well, thank you for joining us for this League Volunteer Induction. The session today is part of a series we run on an annual basis to provide induction sessions for key volunteers across the football community. It's the first time we've run a session for League volunteers, so I really hope this helps extend and complement the sessions we already run for club volunteers and provides a useful service and fills an important gap within the annual football calendar. As it's for League volunteers generally, I've been trying to cover as much as possible, but without being too specific for any particular role. That's partly because of the number of the level of turnover we get, whereas we would tend to get 20 or 30 new clubs each season and 20 or 30 key volunteers in each role as an annual bit of turnover. Across the League volunteers, it's only 5 or 6 typically across all different roles. So I couldn't go down the route of doing role-specific inductions for every role across the League committee. Hopefully it proves useful though, and if you do have any feedback, then please let me know through support@bucks-bucksfa.com. So there's 5 key areas we're going to cover today. First is I just want to introduce who we are at the County FA and our role within that grassroots football community. We'll then look at the role of the management committee, the key relationships, and the key functions or way that we expect League management committees to operate. I'm going to touch briefly on safeguarding responsibilities. It is only brief because there is the safeguarding for committee members session, which all key youth league volunteers are required to complete, and that goes into your safeguarding responsibilities in much greater detail. But I just want to touch quickly around those broader safeguarding responsibilities that everybody in football has. I'm then going to spend a bit of time looking at the league responsibilities around discipline and where leagues have jurisdiction and where the county has jurisdiction, but then how we work together to make sure that we're managing behaviour across grassroots football. And then do a bit around the process for rule breaches, which could come across any role within a management committee, whether it's fixtures, referees, results and so forth. And then finally look at that league appeal process, because that's something which is very important across kind of the league operations, but it's something which still trips a lot of people up. Finally, we'll just do a quick run through of the key FA technology platforms that are available to help you with running your leagues, and then the support that the county and the FA can offer. So looking first at the role of the county FA, really I see county FAs as central to the grassroots football pyramid. We have close relationships with the FA that sit above us and delegate us certain responsibilities around running grassroots football, and then we feed back into the FA and make sure that the interests of our local clubs, leagues, players, volunteers and so forth are being represented properly to the FA for national decision making. As a county FA, we then affiliate any club who is based within our county. They will affiliate to us, and then any league where the majority of the clubs are affiliated to Bucks, and Bucks will then be sanctioned by us as well. We have a bit of oversight over those clubs and leagues as they are our members, and that's where the FA delegation of power and responsibilities to the county FA applies. But then also we try to make sure that that working relationship between leagues and clubs is functioning properly, and we're here to support that relationship as well. Really, that relationship between leagues and clubs is a critical one. It's leagues that are putting on football matches week in, week out, arranging fixtures, dealing with postponements or any issues that crop up. And so it's a crucial relationship there, making sure that partnership between clubs and leagues is functioning well. Obviously, if it does break down for any reason, we're here as an independent arbiter or independent governing body that can then try to support a resolution for that, either through informal means, or if there is a more formal appeal by a club against a decision of the league, it would be escalated through to ourselves to make a decision on through one of our independent disciplinary panels. Across all of that, though, we're also here to support the volunteers to make sure that you're getting the technology training you need, that you're getting the safeguarding training, and any other kind of issues that may crop up. We're able to support the volunteers in the smooth running of those clubs and leagues. Moving on to the role of the management committee, this little snapshot, it may only be 6 lines, 30 odd words. It's doing an awful lot of heavy lifting, it has to be said. So the role of a league management committee is to A, be elected annually by the clubs to run the competition on their behalf, and B, to make sure that is being done in accordance with the FA Standard Code of Rules and the local league rules. Each of those different sections is critical, and very much speaks about how the committee should operate and kind of the breadth of the responsibility and accountability there. So committees are elected annually by the member clubs of that league. Really, the committee is there to serve at the pleasure of the members and to make sure the competition is being run effectively in the interests of the members, rather than top-down decisions being imposed. It should be bottom-up membership, a membership process. FA Standard Code of Rules then pretty much gives a good operating guide for league committees, pretty much sets out what powers you have and how the committee should be functioning. And then you may well have local league rules as well that supplement that and add to it to cater for the individual needs of the league itself. If you haven't already looked at the FA Standard Code of Rules, now's a really good time to do so. It is broken down into two key sections. First is governance rules, so very much how the competition is administered and run. So it talks through everything like how the management committee functions, how clubs are elected into it, how rules are changed, how the AGM and the SGM operates, and provisions for if the league has to wind up for any reason. And the second section is much more around the football itself. So how matches are coordinated, the format of the competition, format of fixtures, responsibilities around reporting results, appointing match officials, and so forth. What I want to look at in a bit more detail is just that first section around governance rules. So as I say, it sets out how the management committee operates, and within that there's effectively 6 key rules that need to be looked at. So Rule 5, the management nomination and election of the committee, that really sets out how you as committee members are elected, deadlines for re-election, frequency of meetings, and so forth. Rule 6 then shows you how and when the committee make the decisions and sets out the process for rule breaches, which we're going to cover in a lot more detail later. Rule 7 then is the procedure for clubs to lodge a complaint or a protest. And again, we're going to go through those definitions later on and talk through what an appeal looks like. Rules 8 and 9 then talk about annual and special general meetings. There is a standardised agenda which must be followed across all leagues within grassroots football, which has a very sensible flow to it, but really sets out and then sets out processes around how votes are conducted and so forth. It will also give you all of your deadlines as to how and when clubs need to be notified of an upcoming meeting. Finally, Rule 12 is the what happens if it all goes wrong rule. So it talks around how clubs, teams, and management committee officials could be removed by clubs if there's a breach of codes of conduct or if they deem it necessary for whatever reason. I want to talk quickly just around what constitutes good governance within a league volunteer setting. Now, really, these keywords that you see on the screen right now are key principles of good governance regardless of the organisation. So whether you're a bank, whether you're a county FA, whether you're a volunteer league management committee, all of these principles should really apply. So in terms of how the committee operates, should be transparent. There should be minutes recorded of all meetings, and those and you should be sharing those meetings if requested by one of the member clubs. Equally, there should be AGM minutes recorded every year, which are then provided after the meeting to the clubs and will be approved at the next year's AGM. That very much feeds into the accountability of the management committee and the point I made earlier that the committee serve at the pleasure of the clubs. So it is a membership organisation. The committee can be removed by the members if they believe it's appropriate, if they don't think you're running the competition as they see fit. And that's where that accountability comes in. Also, where integrity comes in, I probably should move that up a bit higher, but integrity really is about making sure you're making the right decisions for the right reasons each time. We have a great quote on one of the office walls, which is, "Do what is right, not what is easy." That means that when you're making a decision, you're making it based on the legitimacy of the rules that you're looking at, and you're, in effect, not always worried about the consequence of what that right decision will lead to. So a great example for that is, comes up quite often, that towards the end of a season, the club may well have, or it may come to your attention that a club has had an abandoned game or has played an ineligible player for whatever reason. Could well be that the outcome of your decision then is going to impact whether that club loses the points from the fixture and therefore loses the championship, or the title could suddenly go to another club because of that decision. It's important when you're making those decisions and you're looking at those types of rule breaches to strip away what the outcome of that is going to be. You've got to look at what the rules say about that breach, whether that breach has been met, and then what the rules state should be the consequences of that. Ultimately, if the club playing an ineligible player or causing an abandonment means they lose the title, that's their responsibility, and that's on them for having committed that offence in the first place. It's not on you for having made that decision. You show the integrity by making the right decision in that situation, regardless of what the knock-on consequence will be to that club and that league position. That also very much talks around the consistency and making sure that you're making those same decisions in those same circumstances every time. That's how you avoid any perception of bias or accusations of questioning your own integrity within the league. It's also crucial when looking at integrity that we are taking into account conflicts of interest. Now, conflicts of interest are real or perceived, and the general rule would be if you think there might be a conflict of interest, there probably is, and it's best to remove yourself from that decision-making process so that you can't be challenged on it in the future. What we mean there is you don't want to have an accusation that because you've taken a decision, again, that may have cost one team a title, that's benefited your own club. If there is a decision being made that could positively impact a club that a management committee represents, they should be removed from that decision-making process. Again, we're not questioning the integrity of that individual. It's that perception that there could be a conflict of interest. And it's always best to err on the side of caution in those situations. Looking a bit more positively, there is expectation, again, through good governance in general, that management committees should be inclusive. So they should be participatory, trying to draw people in. You should be representative of your members and the football community that fall under your league. You should be innovative, so always looking to develop and to see what best practices out there or how you can improve the offer that the league makes. And then that you're looking at succession planning as well, so that if for any reason somebody leaves the management committee, that there's somebody ready and waiting to step up and take that place, so that actually you're not suffering because of that decision. When you have got critical roles around kind of fixture management, referee appointments, or secretariat roles, it's really important to make sure that you have a succession plan in those, because if somebody leaves mid-season or is no longer able to fulfill that role, if you don't have a succession plan in place, all that would happen is that'll place extra burden on you during a critical time of the season when you're already doing another role, and then will only be adding to your own workload. Want to touch a bit more on inclusion, and that's something that is a real key priority for us in the County FA at the moment. I think it's fair to say that committees should be representative of the membership, so that cuts across both racial backgrounds, it cuts across ethnicity, it cuts across sexuality, ability and disability, and cuts across gender. So although you may be an adult male league, it's likely that you will have female spectators or female club representatives on working within the league as well. Therefore, it's important to make sure that you've got female representation on your management committee as well. It adds diversity of thought, it adds a diversity of experience and backgrounds, and there is no way in which diversity will worsen the ability of a league management committee in their function. So I'd really encourage all leagues, and this is something we're going to be doing a bit of work with over the course of the 23-24 season, to look at the diversity and makeup of your management committee and how you can better attract more diverse representatives from your clubs to make sure that you're really meeting that inclusion aspect. I mentioned I'm going to touch briefly on safeguarding responsibilities, and as I say, I'm not going to dwell on this too much. Certainly, if you're a management committee member for a youth league, you have an individual responsibility to maintain your own personal qualifications. And I mentioned earlier that key committee members have to hold that safeguarding for committee members qualification. It's a free online course run by the FA. It takes about 30 to 40 minutes to complete, and it just looks at how your role and your decision making as a member of the management committee could go on to impact children, and how to make sure that you're always bringing those considerations into your decision making. It's also fair to say that as a committee member, you're in a position of responsibility, a position of trust. It may well be that a club representative or even a youth player therefore comes to you if they have an issue or a concern, and this will help you understand kind of how to best to respond to those situations and direct any issues that may, or escalate any issues that may crop up. Typically, we'd say that if you do have a disclosure or a safeguarding concern, that should be reported in the first instance to your league welfare officer or to the county FA designated safeguarding officer and safeguarding team. Where that's important is it is now a criminal offence not to report a safeguarding concern. So again, if in doubt, I'd say to make sure it comes to an appropriate person who has that understanding about what to do with that report. Finally, as the county FA, we've got responsibility for monitoring the safeguarding qualifications of both league officials and team managers. So if a team official becomes non-compliant, it's the county FA's responsibility to make sure that the club are addressing that. We've also then got the authority that if they fail to address that, fail to renew a DBS, for example, or fail to renew a safeguarding qualification, we've got the authority to withdraw that team's affiliation until that compliance matter is resolved. In those situations, the expectation for the league is that you would withhold fixtures. Actually, we would instruct you to do so, but those fixtures would be rescheduled for once that compliance issue has been resolved. Although as the league, you'll be able to see the status of safeguarding qualifications for teams within your league, it's not your responsibility to push clubs to address those. Don't take on extra work that you don't need to. Appreciate your volunteers with a heavy workload already. We have that responsibility at the county FA, so we'll take on that burden and take on that workload. It's what we're here for. Finally, just a reminder, you will see it everywhere, and it is very, very true and very, very important that safeguarding is everyone's responsibility. So we all have that duty of care to children to make sure that if we have any concerns, it is being escalated through the appropriate channels. In terms of safeguarding support within the county FA, we've got quite a rigorous structure in place across the county FA workforce to make sure that we're providing that support and training and education across the grassroots community. So Liz Verrill, our chief executive, is our senior safeguarding lead, so has overall responsibility for safeguarding across the county. I then deputise for Liz in her absence, and as head of governance, oversee the safeguarding team and day-to-day safeguarding operations within the county. Through that, we've got Graham Fisher, who's our designated safeguarding officer and is that primary point of contact for any safeguarding concerns that may crop up. He then has two deputies, Rod Noble and Rob Roslin. Rob and Rod, just to confuse everything, that gives us coverage across both departments within the county FA and make sure that in Graham's absence, there will always be somebody here that's able to pick that up and support you. At a board level, then, we also have a safeguarding and behaviour director, who is John Horsley. John's been part of the County FA board for quite a number of years now through his role as vice chair and then board safeguarding champion. Through a restructured board, he's now become the board safeguarding and behaviour director. So he's got a very much expanded but much more specific remit and portfolio for keeping us to account around all disciplinary and safeguarding matters. So going to take a little bit of time now to look through managing poor behaviour and discipline through the league format. This is something which comes across a whole load of different a whole load of different committee responsibilities, because it can impact results, can impact fixtures, referee appointments, respect, discipline officers, league fines, and so forth. So it's something that's worth spending a little bit of time on. First of all, I'm going to talk about match-based discipline. So what the process is should somebody commit an offence on the field of play or misconduct be committed. First area to highlight is that it's the county FA that has sole jurisdiction for managing discipline, on-field discipline and misconduct within the county. So it's our responsibility to investigate those incidents, to raise charges for FA regulations, and ultimately see that through to the end, which may be fines and suspensions against players or potentially clubs. Unfortunately, leagues do not have the ability and cannot suspend players, coaches, teams, or officials. There's very specific instances or regulations around how a team can be removed from a league for poor behaviour, or how a player can be deregistered, but anything short of that has to be managed through the county FA. What that means is that disciplinary offences within the league must be reported to the county FA. That includes red and yellow cards or misconduct incidents. If you look in the FA handbook around jurisdiction for discipline and the referee regulations, the FA actually talks about very, very little information being shared with the leagues for match-based discipline. By the letter of the regulations, a referee should only be reporting the name of an offender and the offence category to the league, no other information. Or if there's been misconduct, the referee can alert the league that they have submitted a report to county about an individual, but that is all the information that should be shared. Now, I also know that's not practical. As I said at the beginning, it's the leagues that are arranging fixtures, that are delivering football week in, week out, that are working with the referees, working with the clubs on a day-to-day basis. So I appreciate that a lot of the times it's yourselves who will receive the first report from a referee about what's happened. All I would say is, as soon as you receive something that could be considered misconduct, or as soon as you're notified of red and yellow cards, send it through to us. The worst that'll happen is you'll be telling us something we've already had reported by the referee. But ultimately, when it comes to investigating misconduct, so anything that's abusive, aggressive, threatening, violent, that has to come through the county FA rather than the league. Now, some things that are considered misconduct will also be rule breaches. So, for example, playing a suspended player or causing abandonment of a match. In those situations, it must come through to the county first. So we must have completed our disciplinary procedures before the league would then act about that rule breach. Now, typically, for a quote unquote standard misconduct report, the county has 90 days to conclude our disciplinary process. So take that from report all the way through to issuing or having a hearing and issuing a suspension or a fine. That's been reduced from 180 days to 90. Now, when it's an abandoned match, we're conscious that that has significant impact, or could have significant implications for the league in terms of determining outcome of cup matches or league standings, particularly towards the end of the season. As such, if a match has been abandoned, that deadline for us is reduced to 42 days. So 6 weeks effectively to be able to deal with that. Again, that's why it's so important that things are reported to us promptly. But we'll always make sure that we're trying to far exceed those. And we typically have a target internally that on average, we want all of our misconduct cases heard within 30 days. Some will go beyond because of the complexity of a case, but we work to about a 30-day average by and large. And what we also promise through that as well is that the competition secretary will receive automatic updates from us around the status of any misconduct investigations. We have a central database and central case log that we use now. We'll use that to automatically send out updates when a case is received or when a report is received, when it proceeds to charge, hearing, and is ultimately closed. So you'll always be aware of the status of that through us and through the league statements, which can be downloaded through the whole game system. And just to provide confirmation about different types of offences and where that jurisdiction lies, we've created a little table which is on the screen. And as I say, we're both the county and competition are involved. So those three kind of in the middle of the page there. The county must have completed our disciplinary procedures before the competition can act. Just wanted to highlight this area around withdrawing a team from a game. Now, it's the referee that has sole authority to abandon a match, whether that is because of playing conditions, so waterlogged pitch or deteriorated pitch for whatever reason, whether it's due to player safety or whether it's due to discrimination or safeguarding concerns. If a manager makes that decision to withdraw their team from the field of play against the instruction of the referee or because of the referee's performance, that is considered bringing the game into disrepute and is considered an act of misconduct. Therefore, if a team walks off, the county FA will always investigate, and it may well be that the manager that withdrew the team will actually face the charge, even if that is citing player safety. It's the referee that has that authority to determine whether the player's safety is being endangered. The only exception to that will be around discriminatory abuse, and I'll come on to that shortly. But by and large, 9 times out of 10, if a manager withdraws their team from the field of play, they will likely face a consequence for that. I want to talk through discrimination in a bit more detail at this stage, because again, it is an absolute massive priority for the county FA at the moment. So, similar to safeguarding, we all have a responsibility to combat discrimination and to stamp it out from our game. What that means is any allegation of discrimination absolutely must be reported to the county FA immediately. As I said, all misconduct must be reported to us. That's doubly so, triply so when it comes to discrimination. The only way we are able to act on it is when it is reported to us. So any act of discrimination on the field of play must be reported to the referee. The referees have specific training and guidance as to what they must do in the event that discrimination is reported to them. Obviously, if a referee hears discriminatory comments, that is a red card offence. Player must be sent off and a report must come in to us at the county afterwards. If a referee doesn't hear the comment, they should still stop play, speak to the players involved, make notes around what has been reported to them, and submit that report to the county FA afterwards. We will then pick up the investigation and try to understand or make a determination as to whether we raise charges for that allegation that's been raised. If there's ongoing discriminatory abuse, the referee, and again, it's only the referee, has the authority to take the players off the field of play until that behaviour ends, if it's being conducted by spectators. And ultimately, it's the referee that has the ability to abandon a game. Now, if a team walks off the pitch citing discrimination, we will, of course, investigate the claim. However, the team, as I've mentioned before, that's walked off could still face charges depending on the outcome of our discrimination. Now, in effect, what the county FA will have to do is determine whether that allegation of discrimination is found proven. So, if the allegation is admitted during our investigation phase, then the team that's walked off won't face any further sanctions or any further charges, because we've established that they effectively were justified in walking off the field of play because of the abuse they were receiving. If the claim of discrimination is denied or we're unable to gain sufficient evidence to support that allegation, the team that's walked off will still get a charge because they've committed an act of misconduct, potentially in walking off the field of play. Now, where both parties are charged, the charge relating to the act of discrimination will always be heard first. And if that charge is found proven, the charge against the club for walking off will be withdrawn. If the charge of discrimination is not found proven, then that charge against the club for walking off the field of play will proceed, because again, ultimately, we haven't been able to find the allegation of discrimination proven. Therefore, the burden or the liability for walking off now falls with the team that have made that decision to leave the field of play. So quite complicated, but it is very much county FA responsibility to manage those situations. Now, you may well have seen in the press over the last few months that the FA have introduced points deductions in grassroots football for repeat proven cases of discrimination. Now, this is coming in for the first time this season, so it's very much a case of we'll have to wait and see what the impact of it is going to be. However, for the 21-22 season, which at the point this was introduced was the last season we had full data for, there were 136 teams that would have met this threshold for a points deduction. That's across the entire country, not just the county of Berks and Bucks. Within Berks and Bucks, I can think of probably 1 or 2 teams across the last 5 years that may have met this threshold. So it's something that's highly unlikely to impact your league. If it does, we will work through that process with you. But the threshold that a team has to meet is that they have 2 or more proven charges for discrimination or a serious offence against a match official, so threatening behaviour and above, within a 12-month period, and that's a 12-month rolling period. At the point that they've had that second charge proven within that 12-month period, the county FA will raise a third charge against them, solely looking at that, meeting that threshold. When that charge is then heard, it will be heard by another FA panel who will order a points deduction, and you can see on the screen there the different deductions available to them depending on the offences or the number of offences. We will then instruct the league to deduct those points, and it's non-negotiable. It's an instruction from the FA that that team must have those points deducted. The league will not face any liability on this because it's not your decision. Any appeal against that would go to the FA. If a league refuses to do that, ultimately you would face a misconduct charge for failing to comply with an instruction of the FA. So hopefully you understand the reasons as to why we're doing this, the potential positive impacts of it coming in. And as I say, it's highly unlikely that it will happen to you. On the off chance it does, we will work through you and we'll work with you and work through that situation together. This is obviously a massive change nationally around discrimination and part of the FA's strategy for tackling discrimination. I want to talk briefly around kind of our strategy within Berks and Bucks to do the same. We've introduced this strategy this season looking really across 4 key areas of the game, and we're trying to take a holistic approach to this, recognizing that just punishing people after the fact isn't enough to actually eradicate discrimination from the game. We need a cultural change. We're also conscious that the instances of discrimination are probably underreported. I think across the county FA network nationally, there's a sense, and it is only a sense because we don't know for certain, that discrimination is probably underreported by potentially 100%. So there could be twice as many cases occurring that are actually coming reported to us. So we want to make sure that we are acting in a way that is supporting victims, encouraging people to come forward, and improving the confidence in the county FA to manage discrimination offences when they're reported through to us. So you see down the left-hand side, there's very much around our internal operations to raise awareness of the correct reporting procedures, raise awareness of the sanctions, work closer with victims to make sure they're being supported through the disciplinary processes, and hopefully ultimately lead to an increased number of proven reports of discrimination in the first instance, and then potentially in a few years' time, we'll look to see if that goes down because of the impact of these. On the right-hand side is kind of where we're looking to engage with our clubs and our leagues to improve the culture around inclusion and improve diversity across grassroots football, with the intention that that will then create a culture where discrimination is not tolerated and not prevalent, and we're actually positively impacting football. So we're looking at increasing inclusion officers around the clubs and providing additional resources and support to them if and when discrimination does occur. And then across the leagues, we're looking at how we can work closer with yourselves to create early intervention systems where there's poor behaviour in general, in the hopes that we're addressing it at the lower level that stops it escalating into discrimination. And then also looking at how we can work with leagues around improving that diversity and inclusion across the league networks, as I mentioned earlier. Really excited by this strategy. We're really excited by the fact we're taking this holistic approach, and we really hope that it is something that's going to have positive impacts across the county over the course of the next 12 to 36 months. Moving on then, I want to look around how leagues manage rule breaches and discipline internally. And again, this is something that cuts across all league roles. and I'll explain why when we talk a bit more about rule breaches shortly. First up, though, I want to look at the 4 key terms that we use across this, because I think there's a lot of confusion that can happen around what is a complaint, what is a protest, what's a rule breach, and what's an appeal. So I've put definitions together for all of these, and it's something that we're going to keep hammering home, that we want to make sure the right terminology is used for the right offence, because then it helps everybody understand what the correct process is for dealing with that. So first up, what's a complaint? To my mind, and this is definition we've had agreed with by the FA, complaint is relating to the conduct of the opposition or the conditions under which the game has been played, but ultimately is not going to impact the outcome of the game. So it is, let's say, somebody is not happy with the way the other team has behaved, the way the coaches have behaved, or the kind of the conditions of the pitch, whether it's size. So if it's full of divots or dog poo or whatever it may be, you would submit a complaint to the league, and it would be dealt with, but they would not lead to any formal rule breach charges, disciplinary charges, or impact the outcome of that game. So you're not going to see a 3 points overturned on the basis of a complaint. Where you might have that, it would be through a protest. So if a club believes the outcome of a fixture is unfair due to a potential breach of league rules, so for example, the opposition's fielded an ineligible player for whatever reason, whether it's due to registration or suspension, they can submit a protest to the league. There's regulations around how quickly a protest has to be submitted and fees that go along with that. That is to make sure that you're not dealing with frivolous cases, that they have to be substantiated effectively. And a protest would effectively lead to an investigation by the league to try to determine if that protest is valid. If it is, there's a decent chance that actually that protest is going to lead to a rule breach. Now, this is where a lot of leagues become unstuck, because they will go through the protest process, but then won't issue a formal rule breach charge. And they will just proceed to hear that rule breach without offering the opportunity for any response or the club that's been charged with it to put their case forward. So if you as a league believe there's sufficient evidence that a club has breached one of your rules, you must charge that club in accordance with Rule 60. Sets out exactly the kind of information that's required to send to the club and the process for dealing with it. Now, if a club deny the alleged rule breach, they can request to attend a hearing in person to put their case forward. That is different to an appeal. An appeal only happens after the league's made a decision. So if it's a first instance hearing, it is a hearing. It's you making your decision. It's not an appeal at that stage. They have a right to deny a charge and request a hearing to present their case. Now, if you've gone through that process and you've found against the club and issued a fine and potentially points deduction, that decision can then be appealed to the county FA. That is an opportunity for the club to challenge the league's decision or decision-making process formally, and that is the end of any of these processes. The final decision will come down to a league appeal board, which is final and binding. So 4 things which could all mean the same thing, but are slightly nuanced and treated in slightly different manner each time. So with rule breaches, this is something, as I say, that's tripped up a lot of leagues over the last few years, even very experienced committee members, so it's worth reinforcing every time. As is mentioned before, if you have evidence that a rule was breached, there must be a formal written charge. The club have to know what it is they've been accused of breaching and when, and what their right is to deny that charge. In that, and we've got template letters that can support you with through all of this. In addition to being told what the breach is, the club must be given an opportunity to respond, so accept or deny that allegation, and represent themselves in person if they wish. Once you've had that response, or if you haven't had a response after 7 days, the league should be proceeding as soon as is reasonably practicable. So you don't want this dragging on to the end of the season. It should be dealt with pretty much within about 2 weeks, I'd suggest. And if at any stage as a management committee member, you are asked to consider a rule breach and you haven't been given a charge letter, or you haven't seen what the response of the club is, stop. and demand that that is done. Reason being that if the league fails to issue a rule breach charge notification and give the club the opportunity to respond and attend a hearing if they want, that decision will probably be overturned on appeal because it is not found, it's not legitimate decision that's been made. So we'll just run through that again in the flowchart form. Very easy process. You're informed of the rule breach, confirm the facts, and under league rules, you've got to take 28. You've got to take action within 28 days. So you've got to raise a rule breach within that time. The charge is issued and the club are given 7 days to respond. They can accept or deny it, and they can submit a written response or request to attend a personal hearing. Charge is then considered and decision made on the outcome. That any outcome should be in line with the league rules as well. So if there's a fine, it must be in line with the fines tariff. And the club then have 14 days to submit an appeal to the county FA. And that is from the written notification of the result. The reason that those timeframes are in place, and we talk about 28 days for issuing a charge and 14 days really for conducting the hearing, is to ensure that integrity for the competition. I mentioned earlier, that's one of the key principles of good governance. If a player or if a club plays an ineligible player in October, it's not appropriate to then wait until April to raise the charge, conduct a hearing, because again, that and then withdraw the points from October, which could lead to that club losing their league title. It's got to be timely, otherwise you can open yourselves up to allegations of conflicts of interest. You know, if you're suddenly making that decision at that stage, although it may still be the right decision. I mentioned before about making sure your decision is consistent and in line with league rules. It's only fair on the club for that to be made in a timely manner, so they know if they've lost those 3 points in October, actually they've got 3 or 4 months to make them back up again. You've got to take into consideration that sporting integrity when we're conducting league business. So the appeal process then, I mentioned a club has 14 days from the date of the written decision to submit an appeal to the county FA. Any decision of the management committee can be appealed, but it can only be appealed by the subject to that decision, so the club that you have found against. As the county FA are appeal boards, we've got responsibility to fairness and integrity of the competition. So what I mean by that is that if a league has failed to follow the correct process and therefore failed to follow their rules and regulations or failed to provide a fair hearing, it is likely that the appeal will be upheld. However, there's a responsibility to the integrity of the competition as well. So if a breach has been clearly committed, from a sporting perspective, it's only fair that that sporting sanction would stand. So you may well find that any fines were overturned, but the sporting penalty remains in place. We've got to try and balance those two aspects. However, as I say, where leagues fail to follow that correct decision, it may well be overturned. You may bear costs of the appeal, you may have any fines rescinded and so forth. So please make sure you follow the correct process. What I would say as well around appeals is everybody has the right to appeal. Don't take it personally, effectively. Quite often what we found is that if a club has appealed a league decision, the league are upset at the fact that their authority's been challenged or that their decision's been challenged, can be quite confrontational or obstructive to that league appeal process. It's part of running a fair and balanced and league that has integrity. It's important that you make sure your clubs are aware of the appeal process, that they are advised correctly through that. And all that we're asking for you when responding to an appeal is for you to set out how you made that decision. It's not something that should be done in a confrontational manner with the club. We get probably 10 to 15 appeals each season on our misconduct cases. And so hopefully anybody that's been through that will know we support the appellant's right to appeal and support them through the technical side of the process, even though we will obviously put our case forward about how and why we've made the decision. Ultimately, we won't take it personally. And actually, if we are found to have erred in making that decision, and the appeal is upheld, and it's found against us as the county FA, we've got to take that as a learning opportunity and make sure we don't make that same mistake in the future going forward. And I just ask that leagues take that same approach as well. Right, that's enough of the lecturing over on that. I'm going to move forward and start looking at the technology systems that we have in place to try to help you with managing the league. They, by and large, they fall into those three on the screen. More and more stuff is being transferred from the whole game system to the FA competition portal. Whole game is likely going to be mothballed at the end of this season, as the final aspects will move into the new club and competition portals. What that means is current functionality for leagues is your league structure, so constitution of divisions and cups, your player registrations and basic team information is now found in competition portal. We're expecting that at some stage over the next 6 months, the league officials aspect will also fall into competition portal. So that's what you'll use if you need to update who's responsible for different roles within the management committee. And then from the start of next season, we're expecting league sanction and discipline management to go into the competition portals as well. Those final three aspects for now, though, continue to use whole game system to keep them up to date or access that information. Final one there, bottom right in green, is full-time, which is the FA's league management software. And that's really where you'll be able to use, if you don't already use it, but to integrate all of the information that comes through from whole game and the portals to then run the league, basically. So your fixture management, results, referee appointments, managing cups, accessing player statistics can all be found in full-time. And if you're not currently using it, I'd really encourage you to reach out to us, get a better understanding about the software, what it can do, the functionality that's available, and we'll hopefully then be able to transition the league onto that. All of those systems are completely free of charge as well. So although I know there are third-party platforms out there, Prawn Sandwich and Got Football and so forth, those obviously come at a cost to the league, whereas the FA systems are offered free of charge. So if you are currently using a third-party platform, investing your money in that, it's worth having that conversation within the league management as to whether that's a correct use of club funds. One thing I would say around full-time is that the county doesn't have automatic access to it, whereas we do for whole game and competition portal. Therefore, if you do want tech support with that and the county FA to assist with setting the season up and so forth, please add myself as a league administrator, and then we've got that ability to go in and support you with that. There are also a couple of online platforms that can help you with tech support. So if you haven't used it before, the FA's Grassroots Technology Platform is a real great source of tech support. They've got online solutions for pretty much all of the frequently asked questions or issues that crop up, whether it's through competition portal, whole game, match day, full-time, and so forth. Generally, if something comes to us and we don't know the answer, we will use that as our resource as well. So I'd recommend bookmarking that link and using that as your first point of call if you ever have anything that you don't quite know how it works or an issue that crops up during the season. We are then looking to duplicate that across wider aspects of league management with the BBFA Support Hub, which is going to be launched next month in September. This will have an online resource of help guides and solutions and FAQs around wider aspects of club and league management and grassroots football. So a lot of the information I've provided this evening around rule breaches, league discipline jurisdiction, good governance, election processes for leagues, and so forth will be available as user guides on this platform. We're building it at the moment. That link is live. You'll get to see all of the draft solutions as they're being created. If you do go on there in the next couple of weeks, but as I say, we will be launching that properly just around the opening weekend of the league season. Beyond that, within the county, we obviously have various other support and resources available. So we've got online resources I just mentioned. We've got one-on-one support we can offer, whether that is attending management committee meetings to help deal with issues, or one-on-one Teams meetings to go through the technology and help you get set up with all of the online platforms. We're here to help with any of that. We run regular CPD and information sessions, such as the induction session today. We do discipline forums with leagues, governance forums, and so forth. We also offer help with longer term development planning through our development team. And then we have a league representative network, which is open to all leagues. You can nominate one person to represent the league on the network, and they help with setting the county FA direction as far as it goes with league support. So checking and challenging our operational plan, providing recommendations around key areas where leagues need support and need interventions. And information about that has been sent out to leagues over the course of the summer in the build up to the sanction, and we'll be sending more information out over the next few weeks. That covers it. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you found the session useful. If you do have any issues or anything crops up over the course of the season, please reach out to us at support@bucks-bucksfa.com. Beyond that, thank you very much for putting your hands up and volunteering within the league. We would not be able to run grassroots football without volunteers such as yourself. Don't underestimate the role you play in providing the national sport. So thank you, keep it up. And if you ever need any help, hopefully you know where to find us. Thank you.